This is the one evening of our Friday nights that we do not have a St. Meinrad monk available. And so you're stuck with me this evening, but I think we'll still cover quite a bit, and it should be good. So, as always, let's begin with prayer. Let's begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, through the intercession of St. Benedict, we ask that you be with us this evening as we learn from his teachings. We learn to take in this knowledge from 1,500 years ago and make it applicable in our modern day world, in our modern day lives. We ask that in this wisdom that's been gifted to us through St. Benedict, we may grow not only in love with one another, but in love with you. That we may grow in holiness and happiness of life, and that in all things we find fulfillment in doing your will. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. So, when we were thinking about, I got my phone up here so I can check on the time. When we were debating what to do for these Lenten talks, the idea of St. Meinrad came to mind in getting the monks to come out, mainly because I was trained there, I knew the people there, like it seemed like a good idea, to do that from St. Meinrad. And so far I think it's gone very well. I think we've had some phenomenal teachers that have come out, and we've learned quite a bit. The other reason, though, that I wanted to invite the Benedictines to come out and to give us this Lent is there was a book that's come out recently, maybe some of you have read it, called The Benedict Option. Now, has anyone read the Benedict Option book? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah. Okay, Benedict Option book. A few. Good. I can say whatever I want now, and you'll have no clue whether it was really in there or not. The Benedict Option, it's an interesting book, and I do recommend reading it, although I do have some reservations about it, and I'll touch on that as well. But in the Benedict Option, which was written by a one Rod, I can never pronounce his last name correctly, Dreher, I think? Rod Dreher. He wrote this book as a response to the world in which we live in today. And very much like what Father Dennis said in our first talk that we had in this series, he looked back at the life of St. Benedict, and Rod, I believe he was a convert. He started off in the Protestant tradition, kind of went through the Catholic faith, the Roman Catholic faith, on his way on to like the Eastern Orthodox faith. So he kind of transitioned through all this. But on his little pit stop in Roman Catholicism, he fell in love with St. Benedict. He loved what he was reading about St. Benedict. He loved why St. Benedict did what he was doing. The Roman Empire was falling. The world seemed to be coming apart at the edges. And he founded a monastery. He founded this example of life to maintain civilization, to maintain some semblance of sanity in the midst of the world's chaos. And Rod, the author of this book, in reading the life of St. Benedict and seeing these, he very much said, this is what we need. He saw our modern age and where we're at and what's going on, and he just saw so many parallels to what was going on in St. Benedict's time. And Father Dennis spoke very much to this. Back then, Rome was falling apart, the empire was falling apart, there was a lot of instability, they just seemed like the end of the world. Nowadays, in the postmodern culture, we feel a lot the same. That we feel like we turn on the news and we don't like what we see. We hear all these horrible things going on in the world. We see a falling away of faith and morals. We see this lack of an understanding of who God is, or whether or not it's even important to believe in God. We see our younger generations especially seeming to be void of a lot of values and virtues that were once so prevalent. And in all of this, Rod, the author, he sees us entering into another dark age, is basically where he's at. He sees that if this trajectory continues, we're going to be kind of in a very dark world. And so he wanted to create a book to prepare us for that. This postmodern, post-Christian culture that we live in. Because there was a time when Christianity just was infused into everything. You couldn't do anything without Christianity just kind of being a part of the waters that we swam in, the air that we breathed. It was just everywhere. But that's not the case anymore. Christianity is now on the fringes. It's now on the edge. And so his proposal is that we do the same thing that St. Benedict did, but instead of it being, this massive project and you have to, give up everything and join a monastery and take these vows and live this life of asceticism and discipline, he proposes, what if we could take the wisdom, the knowledge, and everything that St. Benedict came up with, the rule that he created, and take that idea and transplant it then into our homes. What if we could take the idea of a monastery, this beautiful, peaceful place, and take it then and make that where we live? Make that the place where we're raising our children. Make that the place that we seek security and happiness in retirement. Can that be a reality for us? Is that even possible? And so in his proposal, he says yes. Not only is it possible, but that is the way that we're going to survive what's coming our way. He very much is in the mindset that the church is going to take a massive hit, that we're going to lose a lot of people and a lot of our clout in society, but it'll be a holier church. Very much in the same vein of Pope Benedict, who kind of said the same thing. And I'm going to get into my reservations later. I'm going to kind of hold off on that for now. But I think that idea is a good one. And it's kind of what I want to talk about tonight. How do we take some of the talks that we've already heard about St. Benedict, about the monastery, about love, about baptism, about all these different things, how do we take that idea and make it practical? Because it's one thing to hear about all this stuff, and it's great, and we're learning Benedictine spirituality, and that's awesome. But what does that look like in the home? What does that look like in our family? And so I have tonight 7 proposals, 7 ways that we can make that a reality. 7 things that we can start doing really immediately in our families to really kind of build that notion. Now, I already see the kids over here, they're getting anxious because they're just like, oh no, what does this mean for our homes? What does this mean for the way we live our daily life? And what does this mean? Computers are being taken away from us, video games? Don't worry, we're going to get to that. When I remember the first time that I went down to St. Minor. I was in high school. And I was already discerning priesthood. I was already thinking about this way of life. And my godmother, Aunt Monica, holy woman that she is, she said, if you're really considering this, you're serious about it, like we need to go down and visit St. Minor, because one day you'll probably be studying there, and it's just a beautiful place. You need to go. You've never been. So, and if you're a godmother out there, take note. Like, it works. If you've got a godson or daughter, and they're kind of on the edge, like, do something about it. Like, take them someplace. Pray for them. Makes a difference. So, Aunt Monica and her husband, Uncle Joe, and their kids, Laura and Amy, and Grandma Raper go with us too? I think Grandma Raper went with us at that time. I think she did. Anyways, we all piled into the van and drove the 3 hours down to St. Minor on a Saturday morning. We got down there, and we just kind of took a really quick tour of the place, the Arch Abbey Church, all that. And what I distinctly remember is the peace of the place. And if you've ever been, you know what I'm talking about. You go down there, and it's just like the rest of the world disappears. And there's just this focus there. There's this very intentional desire to be one with God. My dad, years later, had a friend of his at work that was not Catholic, not raised in the Catholic faith, and he just happened to stumble upon St. Minor one day. I don't know how you stumble on St. Minor. It is in the middle of nowhere. But somehow this guy was just kind of traveling through, and he stumbled upon St. Minor and spent some time there. He came back and told my dad at work. He was just like, have you ever heard of this place? St. Minor. And at this point, I was in seminary, I was right down there. He's like, yeah, actually my son goes to school there. And the guy was just like, Tom, that place is something special. And this gentleman, he said, I can't describe it, I don't know what it is, but I found God there. Now my dad wanted to yell at him and just be like, well, of course you did, the Eucharist is there, like he really is there, I'm going to take him by the lapels and shake him, like, yes, of course you did. But the point being, like, even for those who aren't Catholic, even those who aren't raised in this tradition, there's something appealing there. And that's what Rod is trying to get at in this book. He's trying to say that if we can do this, if we can make our families and our homes into this place, this sacred space, we're going to be changed by it. And the world's going to take note that there are certain families out there, there are certain people that just seem to be full of peace. And they seem to have that happiness that the world yearns for and can't find. Now, and this is all very, cliche kind of Christian mentality, but I think it works. And so let's get into that. What are these 7 things? What are these 7 ways, if you want to call that, that we are presented with? And some of these are straight from the book itself. Some of these are from my time at St. Minor, things from the Benedictines that I kind of took in. And some of them have come out from Pope Francis as well. So I think there's a little bit of a hodgepodge of these 7 from all these different sources. But I think it hits on how do we practically make this true in our homes. So the number one thing, and this is true whenever you visit a monastery, and it's kind of one of the beautiful things about going to visit the monastery, is that you have the opportunity to go to the Arch Abbey Church and join the monks in their prayers. And if you do, it is a wonderful experience. They chant everything, there's a lot of music to it, it's just this very, I don't know, and you feel like you're part of this bigger whole because there's this call and response going on. But what really makes it special, and for us priests, we continue this whether we're part of a monastery or not, is that they do this not just once a day, right? It's not like at 5 o'clock in the evening they all get together, and that's the one time the entire day that they get together to pray. They're doing this throughout the day. I mean, I think, Ron, they get up at like 5 in the morning, don't they, for the first prayer? 5 in the morning, people. And then younger ones, you'll talk to them about this, and they're like, yep, I get up at 5, we do the prayer for like 15 minutes, and then I go back to bed. Then I get up again for breakfast and the next round of prayers, and we get on with our day. So it's kind of this, it's kind of in the middle of everything. But then this continues. They do it right at the beginning of the day. They do it, for morning prayer. They do a daytime prayer. They do evening prayer, and then they do it before they go to bed at night with night prayer. So there are really these 5 times throughout the day that they're doing this. And part of the way that you know that they're praying these things is they have these massive bell towers. And every time that it's time for prayer, those things go off like gangbusters. I mean, it's just, and I remember one of my years there, I had a room that was about 20 feet from the bell towers. And these things do not turn off at night. They go through the entire night, every hour on the hour, and then when it's prayer time, it's like this extra glorious thing. Glorious is one word for it. You do get used to it. It's kind of like the trains in Terre Haute. You just become part of your environment. You just kind of forget about it. But the point is, what that does for the monks, and what it does for us priests when we do that, is it anchors us. Because here's the thing, and we talk about this all the time, and I think there's good to it. We talk a lot about, finding time in your daily routine for prayer. And for most of us, what that means is, we pick a time. We kind of look at our calendar, and we say, all right, I'm busy from this time to this time, then I've got family stuff from this time to this time, I've got to eat at these times, I've got to get to bed at some point in time, and so prayer goes there. And we usually even try to do a very good job and say, well, this is what I want to do in that prayer, so I'm going to spend 45 minutes in prayer. I've got this time carved out, it's there, I'm going to do it every day, and that's great. I applaud you for that, it's awesome. Keep doing that, don't change that. But the problem becomes when we fall into that, and that's our only time for prayer. Now all of a sudden it's just another appointment. It's just another piece of the day, and it's almost like we can fall into the trap. I don't think this is true for everybody. We can fall into the trap of that being kind of our checking off the list, right? And we get to that point, we get through prayer, it may be wonderful, good for us, it gets us through the day, it's empowering, highly recommend daily prayer in that routine, but it can get into the rhythm of, good, all right, I checked that off, and now I'm off to work, and everything else the day has to offer, and God is left in that 45 minutes. He doesn't come with us then for the rest of the day, and you can. This is even true for me, like when you get caught up in things, you just kind of forget about God. It just happens. Like you're caught up in what you're focused on, what's happening right in front of you, and God is left back in that prayer moment. It's almost like we have tried to compartmentalize God, and we try to fit him in this little box, and we say, I've got all this other stuff, so he fits in this little section, and that's all I'm going to give him. And then the rest of the day just kind of does its thing. Now, ideally, right? Ideally, romantically, what we would love to see have happen is that time, that slot, expands. And it becomes something that through the rest of the day, like there are God moments, and we recognize it, and we witness God, and He's just in the midst of everything. But that's really hard to do. If you've ever actually tried to do that and just be aware of God at every moment of the day, it's almost impossible. It's so hard to draw ourselves back to God. And so for the Benedictines, and I think what we need to take into account is how do we be intentional about this? When I was a kid, Mom had this painting up on the wall that's still there, very much love it, and it's called the Angelus. I don't know if any of you know that painting. It's kind of a famous painting. I've seen the original in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. It's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. Anyway, if you've never seen this image, what it is a scene of these two individuals, a man and a woman, and they're in the middle of this like wheat field. And it's just kind of golden all around them. And in the distance, there's this itty bitty steeple that's kind of sticking up on the horizon, this little dark spot. And you see them, they got all their tools, like their wheelbarrow and all this other stuff, and it's just kind of all pushed off to the side. And the two of them are standing right next to each other, and they kind of have their hands clasped and their heads bowed, and they're praying. And what it is that steeple, the bell tower is ringing. Obviously you can't hear it, it's painted, but it's ringing, and it's ringing the Angelus, that there are these times during the day that you would stop, no matter what you were doing, to pray. You'd be out in the middle of the wheat field harvesting, and you would stop when you heard the bells so that you could be reminded that God is in that moment. Now, we don't do the Angelus as much as we used to. Okay, so I mean, it used to be 6 in the morning, noon, and 6 at night. You would pray this prayer of the Angelus. The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary, and she conceived by the Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed fruit of thy Jesus, and goes on and on and on. It's a very great prayer. That is something to take back on. It's something to consider taking back on. Or, what if during the day we had set times, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the time that our Lord died on the cross, and we put that in our phone as a time, even if we're in the middle of something, just to be reminded that that time has a sacredness to it. How about this? How about when, through the course of the day, we kind of have our regular prayer routine, we get to the evening hour, and we just have it set up with our family that they know we hit 8 o'clock, we're praying the rosary. Yeah, I hear the kids over there, they're like, no, bad idea. But what does this do for us? Suddenly, we're not allocating God to just a specific time. Now He's there the whole time. And it doesn't have to be, holy hours all over the place. It can just be a couple seconds. But it anchors us. It brings us back. It reminds us that everything that we do is infused with God's grace, or at least it should be. And that's so many, and here's the other thing that happens. You get caught up in the daily routine and all that, and you get stressed out, you get anxious, you get worried about it, or you get exhausted by it, whatever it may be, frustrated. In that moment, we finally have a chance to just stop. Stop it all. Just say, no, I'm not going to give in to this. And grace can enter in. And our perspective changes radically when that happens. Because we finally get to see whatever situation we're dealing with through the eyes of God, not from our perspective. We finally invite something in that's going to remind us, which we always need reminding, that we are sons and daughters of an all-knowing and all-loving God, that we have been created in His image and likeness, that we radiate with His glory, that nothing on this earth should be able to touch us. Neither death, nor life, no principalities, nor powers, no tribulations, no thrones, nor dominions. None of them. But we forget that. And so, what does that look like? And again, for each one of us in our own homes, that's going to look different. We do have different routines. We have different personalities, different kids, and their routines. And so it's something to consider. How do we build in prayer, not just at one moment? And then here's the other piece of it, when you talk about this. We're very big on praying by ourselves. I think we should continue doing that, no problem there. But do we pray with our spouse? Do we pray with our kids? Do we pray as a family. Because that's what unites the monastery. That's what brings those Benedictine monks together and glues them together. It's not that they're all very holy people on their own accord, going off to their own selves and praying by themselves. They do that. But what makes them a unit, what makes them a family, they share that love of God together. It's what we do as a parish every weekend. We come to this space and we share our love of God together. Something to think about. Okay, so that's number one. Oh my goodness, is that the time already? That was just number one? Oh. All right, we're going to be quick. Holy. Number two. Remember the dead. This is something that I see a lot. My generation especially, we're not very keen on learning about our past. We don't like hearing family stories as much. We don't like hearing about grandma and grandpa and how they were raised and what was going on back in their day. And we don't really listen a very lot to what great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and our family history. A lot of that is being lost. We don't tell those stories anymore. And there's a good reason for that, right? Those stories, a lot of times, were told at the dinner table. A lot of those stories about our family and how, great Uncle Joe, crazy Uncle Joe, the crazy stuff he would do, like those stories don't get told. Because we're too busy on our phones, we're too busy with what's happening, in the digital age. And so, at St. Meinrad, and I think for Benedictine spirituality, death is a very, very good thing. Because, of course, it has been transformed by Christ into something beautiful. And so the way they celebrated was just beautiful. It was a beautiful celebration. We have it in the arch. First of all, when a monk died, classes were canceled. So there was a little bit of joy, a little bit, when a monk died. And you'd be like, all right. We go to the Arch Abbey, and they have the casket, their own casket, they make them themselves, right there in the center of the church. And they have it spread out, this white pall with a red cross on it. And they celebrate the Mass. And that same pall, by the way, with the red cross on it, was laid on that monk when he first joined the monastery. Right? So it's a reminder, that you died to self when you joined, and it's placed on you when you die. It's beautiful. You say the Mass, and then you process out of the church. And all the monks are there. And they all have their hoods up, and they're all carrying these candles. And there's this candlelit procession down to the cemetery. And when they get down there, they take the coffin, and they have these ropes tied to it, and they literally lower it into the ground. You see the coffin descend into the earth. They say the prayers at that moment, and then the arch abbot has the shovel, and he just scoops up the shovel full of dirt, and he dumps it in. And it's the loudest sound you've ever heard when that dirt hits that casket. It's like thunder. And then we say our final prayers, and we bid goodbye. But we don't forget. Because then every year, on November 2nd, All Souls Day, we have another Mass in the evening, late at night, which is wonderful. And the entire seminary and the monastic community gather together. So you got, 200 to 300 people. And we all have our candles, and we process down to the cemetery once again, but it's at night. And it's just, and you leave your candle on the top of the tombstone. You each pick a stone and you stand next to it and say these prayers. You leave the candle there. And when you leave, you look back and you can see the candles representing those souls that we still remember. I don't know their names. I don't know what their life was about, but I know that we're praying for them. And they're remembered by their family. This is why as Catholics, we're so big on our dead being buried. We're fine if you cremate them. That's fine. We're okay with that. It's a lot cheaper that way. Just make sure you're buried. Because what that does for us is it's a reminder of the dust to dust of who we are, but then it also is a landmark. It's a place we can always go back to, and we know they're there. There's a physical connection to that space. Even to this day, with my brother, like I go to the cemetery on my day off, and I'll just sit there and just talk. I'll just talk. I love to talk. But it makes him alive again. It reminds me that he is alive. And that he's not forgotten. And so for us, I think one of the things in our families is to be reminded of death. Not to make it the enemy. Not to make it something that we're afraid of and we just don't talk about it. You know, we brush it under the rug. But instead, it's something that is very much a part of our conversation. We talk about the dead. We talk about those who have gone before us. We learn our ancestry. We learn where we come from. Because what does that do? Suddenly, especially for my generation and below, they are so lost because they don't know who they are. They don't know where they come from. They don't have a place that they can establish as the root of who they are. And so they wander this world and they kind of have to make up who they are. They have to kind of create their identity. And they're always unsure about it. It's not on a firm foundation. But suddenly, if we have this family unit and the stories of where we come from and our faith that unites us, and you can go to a cemetery and point out and say, yeah, that's your great-great-grandfather there. Like suddenly, they know who they are. There's a piece of them that they're like, yes, I can claim this as my own. And our faith solidifies that because of the hope that we have that death is not the end. Our family lives on. So we should remember death. Third thing, and this is one of the beautiful, oh my goodness, gosh, this timeline. The Benedict is very good about this. When I first went to St. Mindred, I was standing next to Father Brendan Moss, a great man, and we were doing our evening prayer, and we're chanting, you know, we're doing the normal thing, and I hear him make a mistake, you know. It wasn't a big mistake, like we were singing, and we were supposed to go up, and he went down or something like that. But he was a formator, you know, he's one of your bosses, and I was just like, you know, he made a mistake, you know, like the formator made a mistake. And then I saw him do this, very subtly, you know, he's holding his book, and he just goes, no one else saw it, you know, I mean, just a very, very simple little thing, but he was recognizing, I made a mistake, you know, small, but he admitted to it. This hails from an older tradition of the Benedictines, where if you had made a mistake like that, it was called kneeling out, and you'd actually have to step out of your pew into the aisleway, and you would kneel down for the remainder of the prayer. And what this did is it let the rest of the community know, I messed up. You know, I made a mistake, not intentionally, but I did. Now here's what the beauty of that is. You join this monastery and you make a mistake, right? Like, you know, so you're a little embarrassed, you're a little humiliated, you go out, you kneel out, everyone sees it, it's out in the open, it's aired out. You go to prayer the next day, someone else makes a mistake. Now they're the ones kneeling out there, and you're like, I know what that feels like. The next day, somebody else makes. Suddenly, through the course of the years, every single monk at some point has to kneel out, and everyone sees that. They know that. And what does that do? All of a sudden, we realize, you know what? It's okay to not be perfect. I don't have to put on this facade. I don't have to pretend to be, or to be humiliated when I make a mistake. Everyone's in the same boat. One of the privileges I have being a priest is hearing confessions. Not because, you know, I revel in, you know, hearing everyone's sins. That isn't, I mean, that's not even close. What it is the fact that everyone confesses the exact same thing. It's true. You may not think it. And everyone thinks the same thing. They're just like, I don't want to go tell Father Dan because he's never heard this before, and, you know, I'm the only one in the world who's ever done this thing, and it's like, no, you're not. And what is beautiful to me is we are united in a human family in our frailty, in our brokenness, in our mistakes that we've made. We're all in the same boat. The problem is, we think we're the only ones, and so we feel very lonely and very isolated in our sins. The Benedictine way calls us to admit our mistakes. And you think about that in the family setting, what that looks like, and even for parents, to recognize that they've made a mistake, to ask for, you know, say that they're sorry to their kids. And of course, then the kids need to say they're sorry to their parents. Like suddenly you have a family of broken people that realize it, and they're okay with that. And they can love each other in the midst of that. That's called vulnerability. That's called authentic love and relationship. It's the families where we try to put on here's the other thing. Well, is that going to be the next? Well, we'll make it the next one. Okay. So we made mistakes, but I think it leads to this next piece that I'm going to touch on, which is technology. And what I really want to speak about is the epidemic of Facebook in our society. Because this is what happens, the whole admitting our mistakes. Facebook, we don't admit our mistakes on Facebook. You don't get on Facebook and tell the whole world the things that are wrong in your life. You know, especially things that you've done wrong in your life. What do? You get on Facebook, a lot of people do this, maybe you don't, none of you do this, but some people do this, where they get on Facebook and they take, you know, these amazing pictures of their vacation, they get that perfect shot, you know, and they put it out there, or they get this awesome family picture at Christmas, you know, and it looks like all these people are just the happiest people in the world. It's this glossy, beautiful, wonderful life that these people are living. Little do you know that right before they took that picture of their family at Christmas, there was this big argument that took place, and they were throwing presents at each other because they were so angry. No one sees that. They just see the beautiful image of these kids smiling and how happy they are. And what happens is we look at our lives and we're like, well, I know the truth about my life, and it's not that. And so we see all these other people in the world that are having these wonderful, beautiful lives, and we look at our own life and we're like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I the only person in the world that has broken relationships and a family that is dysfunctional and all this other stuff? Like, why is it just me? It's not. But Facebook makes it look that way. Why? Because we're not admitting our mistakes. We're not vulnerable. We're putting our best face forward. And so for us then, there's something to be looked at in our family where we can admit that we've made mistakes. We can say, I'm sorry, and I forgive you. Because that is going to be some of the bonds that last a lifetime. When you know the other person's weakness and you love them in spite of it. Now, technology then, how do we work with it? How do we deal with it? Because it's there. And I think some people, and this is where I have a little bit of problems with Ron in this book. He's a big fan of just kind of saying, you know what, we just got to pretty much get rid of technology, right? Like we got to get off the web, we got to get out of this because the world's corrupted it all. You know, we just can't engage in that level. At some level, I think he's right. At another level, technology's here. It's going to be here for the long term. We kind of have to accept it. We've got to work with it. But technology was and always should be a tool at our disposal. There's a book series that I love called Ender's Game. Anybody read Ender's Game? A few people? Okay? It has a continuing series beyond just the first book. And in one of the scenes, there's a character, kind of this elderly gentleman, very wise man, and he owns a computer, as everyone else in the world. It sets in the future. It's very, very, very far future. But he leaves his computer out in the tool shed. It's not even in his house. It's in there with the rakes and the shovels and all of his garden implements. It's out there. Because he knows if he brings it in his house, it's going to take over. It will rob him of his freedom. And it's meant to be a tool. That computer is a tool for us to use. Why? So that we can get things done faster, more efficiently, so that what? We have more time to do the good things, like being with our family, and praying, and sports, and athletics, and enjoying life, and music, and all the beautiful things of it. But what happens? It's not a tool anymore. That technology is not at our disposal. It's not helping us do anything. Now it's just taking over. And now we don't have free time. Technology is a very, very good thing. Catholic Church is in favor of technology. You can quote me on that. But we're not in favor of it taking over our lives. So take a good hard look at how you're using your technology. It's not evil. Facebook's not evil. Are you using it as a tool, or is it using you? The next section I want to get to, I've got 10 minutes. Okay, this is a great one. Kids, this is really manual labor. We got some applause. Manual labor is a very, very good thing. When I was a kid, I hated manual labor. And I basically grew up on a farm. My uncle owned the farm. But we'd go out, we'd bale straw, we'd help with the hogs, we'd help with all that different stuff, and I hated it. I hated manual labor. I hated being outside all the time. I love reading. I love studies. I love school, but I hated manual labor. Until I got to St. Minor. And then, and I can't describe what happened or why it happened, but suddenly I began to realize manual labor is very peaceful. You don't have to think a lot. when you're doing manual labor. There's not a lot to get anxious or worried or concerned about when you're doing manual labor. And at the end of the day, you can look at what you've done and be proud of it. You can look at it and say, I did that. You can see the fruits of your labor. It's a beautiful thing. And St. Benedict's all about this. Ora et labora, prayer and works. And his monks, a lot of them, it was farming communities, and they were out there, and they had to do physical labor. Now, that's not because of just survival. I think that was part of it. But the other piece of it is there's something about manual labor and us taking part in it, especially in the home, that makes it clear that we're together in this. Everyone has a part to play. Everyone's a part of the team. And I remember as a kid, I hated that. But I also realized that if it wasn't for me, the grass wouldn't get better. You know, if it wasn't for me, the dishes wouldn't get done. You know, like all these different things that Mom and Dad had us do, that was our part to play. And suddenly, when that happens and you're making a sacrifice, really a sacrifice of your time, your energy, your efforts for that thing, the common good, the good of your family, suddenly what happens? Think about this. You're sacrificing, you're making an effort, you're giving up valuable things for this entity that you're a part of. By blood, yes. But now you feel connected to it. You feel responsible for that. Now you feel like this entity that has given you life and has brought you into this world and has taught you all these good things, you can give back to it at some level. Now fast forward that then, when that's the case, and you kind of have that family dynamic, hopefully that doesn't go away. These kids are kind of raised in that way when Mom and Dad get a little bit older and they need that help. The kids still feel that connection to that family and say, yes, like we got to take care of Mom and Dad, or I got to take care of my brothers and sisters. Suddenly, it's the world today that we live in is so difficult for families. Mainly because when the kid grows up, they go off to college, they get a job, and those jobs are almost always in the big cities and oftentimes are very, very far away from where home base was. Which I think is very unfortunate. Necessary a lot of times, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing because it has to happen, but you lose something with that. When the kids are far away from home and the grandkids are far away from home and distance kind of becomes a part of that, there's something lost. And I'm not really sure what we do about that. I don't have an answer for that one. But at least when they're kids, when they have chores to do, manual labor, and we have chores to do, and they see us working for the good of the home, there is just a dynamic that exists there that we're in this together. And it builds up that monastic feeling of ownership of the family home. So kids, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do some extra work, I think, around the house as we move forward. Okay, so now we're getting to the last two things, and I've got 6 minutes, so 3 minutes apiece, we'll get through this. So, number 6, and this is another area where I kind of disagree with the author of this book, Rod. He talks about how we educate our kids, that the home should be the source of education for our kids. Now, I think he takes it a little bit further, and he basically distrusts pretty much every educational system out there. He doesn't trust the public schools. He doesn't even trust the Catholic schools, really. He's a very, very big proponent of homeschooling, which is fine. And for some families, that is the best way, and they're proud to do it, and they're very good at it, and that's awesome. However, the issue becomes when he gets to this point, he's really big on that, it very much has an isolationist feel to it in the family. This is kind of my biggest beef with the book. What he's setting up is basically that your house, especially if you have kids, being a monastery, it's not just that this is kind of like a foundation for them for the rest of their life. You're basically saying, we are leaving the world. We are exiting the world and everything it stands for, and we're just going to have our own little commune here, you know, where we exist apart from everything else. And then it's just going to stay that way. Because there's really not this feel of going out and engaging the world or saving the world. It's basically kind of saying, well, the world's screwed. So we're just giving up. You know, they're on their own, they got to figure it out, but at least we can have this little parcel of land, you know, where we can exist as we see fit. And the raising of our kids, we're going to be the ones to educate them, we're going to teach them everything they need to know. The way I look at education in the home, doesn't have as much to do with like math and science and all the stuff that we need. And I think any school you send your kid to, they're going to get that stuff. What they need from the home when it comes to education is to be taught what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a person of character and of dignity, and how we do that, not only by our own example, which I think is the primary way. It kills me when I do home blessings, and now from now on, if someone asks me to come and do a blessing, you're going to make sure you have this in your house. It kills me when I do home blessings because I'll go in, and I actually kind of look for this. I'll go to homes, and I'll bless the whole house because they take you to every single room. And in the entire house, I will not find a single book. Not a single book. Which means that the kids aren't reading, the adults aren't reading, which is, that is what it is. But they're not reading stories from the past. They're not reading about great heroes from our past. They're not learning about these great men and women who have gone before us, whether it's saints or founding fathers or you name it. They're not getting that. That education, those heroes do not exist for them. Or, no, they don't. Those heroes don't exist. What has happened then, those kids then, they still need heroes. And they're not getting those heroes that we have in our stories, in our books, in our mythologies. They're not getting any of that. Instead, now they're looking out there for their heroes. And they're finding them. And they may not be the best of heroes. They may not be the best of role models. And so when we look at our families and our homes and the monastic community, and so in monasteries, this is what they do, which I think is beautiful. And I can't recommend this in the home. I don't think it actually works in the home, but what they do, and it's beautiful, is when they have meals, right? When you have a meal at the monastery, it's completely in silence. Okay, so there's some meals that you can converse, but what they try to do is meals are in silence, and there's one monk that sits apart, and he reads from a book while they eat, so that they can kind of take part of this nourishing of their bodies while they're also nourishing their minds and their souls. Now, they kind of divvy it up, so like at lunchtime, there'll be like a theological book or something religious, and in the evening it'll be, something different. It'll be something from like science or a novel or something like that. But the point being, like, that's how they're feeding their monks. That's how we should be feeding our kids, is in that very same vein. Teaching them morals and character, and what does that look like? There's another point I was going to make with that. I can't remember what it was now. It escaped me. Oh, that's what it is. I think it's Chesterton that has this quote. He says, "A house without books is a house without a soul." And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so build up your libraries. Get books. Have them in your house. And not just because I'm going to be coming to bless your homes, right? Like, don't think, oh no, Father Dan's going to get books. There are lots of books in our house. Don't do it for that reason. But do it because kids need these examples. They need role models. They need these heroes. They need stories of what that looks like. They need examples to follow. It's the whole thing that the kid will not do what you tell them to do, but they'll do what they see you doing. So, something to think about. And the last piece, as I have completely run out of time, is this notion that, and I think it sums up everything else that we're going to talk about tonight. And this is the way monastery and seminary, I think too, is founded on this. Everything in your home is formative. This is what I mean by that. Everything in your home makes you who you are. It builds you into the person that you are. And you may not think it matters terribly much, but it does. It matters what you have hanging on your walls. It matters what is being watched on your television sets. It matters what music is being listened to. It matters if you have a place in your house dedicated to God. I see this all the time. I'll go to homes, and you guys are like, I'm not going to invite anybody's home. I'll go to homes though, and you go in, good Catholic family, and I'll go in and they'll have maybe one crucifix up on the wall. But then they'll have like an entire display to like the Indianapolis Colts. Which I'm a huge fan of the Indianapolis Colts. That's fine. They got their signed, football from, Peyton Manning and all this stuff. And they got all this memorabilia, and it's taking up this whole space. They're massive fans, and that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Colts are not evil. Trust me, they're not evil. Great team. But what does that say? Even like on a subconscious level to your kids. if they grow up in a house where there's this massive amount of memorabilia to the Indianapolis Colts and maybe just one crucifix in the whole house. Even if you don't intend it, right? Even if the intention is not to diminish God or to build up the Colts too much, what does that teach? What does that display? Now, that's an extreme example, but I think we need to look at our homes and say, is this a place where I'm reminded that God is present here? When I was a kid, we had, I think I've used this in the home, Father Bramwich came out to the house to do a blessing. He went through the whole place, out in the yard, out the garage, the shed, every place. Blessed everything. And he got done, and one of the gifts that he gave us as a family was this image of the Sacred Heart, right? Which is common practice when you get your house blessed, get that Sacred Heart image. Hung it up on the wall in the living room, along with all these other images in our house. And one day we were playing, and we were having a war in the living room, and there were pillows being used as ammunition, being tossed across the way. And I still hold this to this day. I chucked this pillow at my brother, and I missed. It hit the couch at such an angle that it literally ricocheted. And I mean that. This pillow ricocheted off the couch, like spun up it, and hit the framed picture of the Sacred Heart. And it crashed down. Glass shattered, went everywhere. Kids scattered throughout the house, we're running for our lives. Mom comes in, and through some vigorous investigation and interrogation, my siblings squealed on me. And they were like, well, it was Dan, Danny did it. And I was like, it was an accident, ricocheted off the couch. And my mom was like, it ricocheted off the couch. I was like, that's what happened. But this wasn't the first time this has happened. We've had many statues in our house that all of them, if you go into our house, they have blue marks right along here. Because down through the years, things get knocked over, heads come off, Poor Mary, poor statue of Mary, she's been rebooted a few times. Point is, we had images in our house that could be broken. We had statues and pictures and all over the place. And it was about impossible to play in that house without breaking a holy image of something. But that's okay. That was good. Because what happened? You couldn't go into a room in that house without there being something that reminded you that God or Mary or Joseph or St. Jude or somebody was present. And if we're making our homes into monasteries, if we're truly trying to bring this monastic feel into our families and bring God into that and raise our kids in this Catholic faith of ours, the physical has to be a part of it. And so I challenge you at the end of this to look into that. How does my house, my physical space of a house, aid these things? Is my technology appropriate in my house? Is it a tool at my disposal, or is it taking over the entire house? Is my house dedicated to prayer? Do I have a space that's dedicated to prayer in my house? Is there room for manual labor in my house? Chores that need to be done on a regular basis? Do I have books in my house? Can I be educated in my house? Can I admit mistakes in my house? Do I remember the dead in my house and tell those stories? We don't have to leave the world. We don't have to exit completely. We don't have to abandon our fellow man. But we do have to save ourselves. And the best way to save the world is if we have a strong foundation from which we can, as missionaries, go out and know there's a place we can go back to be refueled, to find solace, to find peace, as if we were going back to saint-minded every time. That we would have this little sanctuary where the world made sense. And that place was preserved from all the stuff in the world. So, with that, kind of my last point, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns at the end of the talk? Yes.
Could we go and visit your place to see the TV?
Sure, I get house tours.
Here.
Absolutely, there's plenty of stuff to break over there. Okay. Yes.
I live alone. If anybody wants to lend children that need manual labor.
That's right, children for hire, right? Gosh, I think that breaks some labor laws.
I like the fact that you admit that you're not perfect.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's very freeing when you can do that, you know. Yes?
Father, I'd like to go back to the first, where the Archabbot was here and said, we do not have a shortage of priests. Mm-hmm. That goes against all the things we've been doing with our, we've been working on our strategic plans and such. We said it's because of our shortage of priests. Mm. How do I deal with that?
Justify all that? Yeah. Well, his point was that it's not about priests, it's about masses. You know, the number of masses that we have. And actually right now we're investigating that. So across the Diocese of Indianapolis, every weekend there are 350 masses being said-ish, 350-ish masses across the Archdiocese. You take the number of churches then, and the size of those churches that are celebrating those masses, and it comes to about 200,000 seats that are available. 200,000 spaces for your rear end to sit, you know, in these churches through any weekend. Of those 200,000, every weekend, about 80,000 are being filled, which means that there's 120,000, more than 50%, that remain empty every weekend. And yet we still have all these priests that are running ragged and celebrating all these masses because that's the way it's always been. And so there is an effort from the Archdiocese to, and I got the paperwork over at the office right now, to look at what can we do about this? You know, where are there gaping and obvious masses that just shouldn't be because hardly anyone's attending them? You know, and then that will save our priests because they're going to, you know, have some more time on their hands and they won't be run ragged in that way. But here's the other thing, and this is kind of the beautiful thing. I think Father Dennis and I talked about this a little bit. When you limit the number of masses from masses that are a third of the way full or half full or whatever, and now you have less masses but they're all full to the nines, the people that attend those masses feel like the church is doing really, really well. It is just psychological. I mean, if you go to like well, let's use the Colts game. If you go to an NFL football game with the Colts, right, and you go to Lucas Oil Stadium and it was 50% full, you'd be like, this team sucks. You know, they're like drawing 50% of this crowd, you know? But if you go and it's sold out, you're like, we got the best team ever, this is great! And the same thing happens in the Catholic Church. You go to Mass anywhere, and there's, you know, even if it's half full, let's just say it's half full, but some places that's pretty darn good. It still feels half full. And you kind of wonder yourself, where is everybody? But you come to a Mass like at 4 o'clock here, and it's standing room only. And you come here and you're just like, yes, you know, like this place is active, this place is alive. We've got people here, they want to be here, you know? So it's not a matter of the priests. I mean, it is. I mean, there is something to be said about the number of priests. I mean, if we have less priests, we just can't operate that way. But right now, the bigger concern is the number of masses that we have. So that was all Dennis's point. And I think that harkens back if we make our homes into monasteries, you know, and you kind of go that route. Like, I mean, you're going to get your kids in the pew, and hopefully they stay there. And as we go down the line, you know, that's going to keep these places going. So, excellent. Yes.
And one of the speakers, excuse me, because I don't remember which one it was, but he made mention of when at the end of the day, tell God where you saw Him.
Yes.
And I have been doing that this week, and I've had more fun. It's a really fun thing to do. Right.
So what Kay's saying, I'm just going to recap for everybody else. One of the speakers talks about how at the end of the day, you should reflect and see where was God during the day, and it's been kind of a fun experience, you know, kind of seeing where God has had a hand in the day. Yes.
And I work at the courthouse, and we have a man who sleeps on the park benches. And everybody thought, you know, he's probably a bum or whatever. This man likes to sleep on the park benches. A guy came out of City Hall, a really nice man, and he had a $5 bill in his hand. And he went over and laid it on the guy's bag. And the guy said, man, I don't need that money. He said, I got money in that box right there. I don't need no money. And I thought, I mean, we both were just kind of looking at each other like, wow, you know. But there was God.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And so I think it changes our perspective on things, right? So when we see a gentleman, sleeping on a park bench, and you know, is just okay. You know, he's doing fine. We see God in that. Exactly, but it does the same thing as the first point. You know, we're through the day, then we're anchored. You know, we have that touch point. You know, that we can see God throughout the day. And so for each person, it's going to be a little different. But the point I think is that we're not just allocating God, you know, to the sideline. You know, that it is something part of our daily experience, and hopefully over time, it just becomes natural. You know, like we just kind of see Him in that regard. So absolutely, excellent. Yeah, John.
A lot of these 7 points that you talked about here are about the Amish. They do a lot of that.
Yes.
A lot of these things.
The Amish, yes. The Amish are very big.
So they're distracting the family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they have very little technology, and they want to keep the family together. The meals, they pray for the meals, they interact, and they get rid of the distractions.
Yes, and so I mean, in the way the Amish live, I mean, it has that monastic feel to it. You know, that they have kind of, you know, sanction themselves off and have this routine to their life. You know, they have their way of doing things that is very countercultural. And in that, then I think there's a lesson to be learned for us as well. Now, what I'm hearing Rob talk about in this book, I think, you know, he's going kind of that direction, you know, to an extreme. But I think there's lessons to be learned that we need to take stock of our own lives and how are we, you know, handling our families, how are we teaching about technology in the world around us. But yeah, the Amish are a great example of that working, you know, and for them a lot of times the family sticks together. Not all the time, but not too bad.
Even the schools, like some of them have their own schools.
Yeah, some of them have schools, yeah, they teach their own kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works. Okay. All right, just a reminder then, a couple notes. So if anyone wants to stick around to help with cleanup, although I don't know if we are responsible for much of that. Yeah, because it's fish fry. Never mind, you guys are good. You don't have to help out at all. We do want to thank the Knights of Columbus for the fish fry. I don't know if you have any of them over here, but big thank you to them. Next week, we'll continue with our soup and bread, which do we have sign-ups, I believe, for soup? We'll bring soup. Do we have a sign-up?
In the back.
Okay, so it's in the back. Oh yeah, I see. So there's like a clipboard in the back. So if you want to bring a soup next week, go ahead and sign up for that. Next week we have Archbishop Justin Duvall, Arch-Abbot Justin Duvall. Former Arch-Abbot, so he's not the current one. He is currently helping out as a formator at Brute Seminary in Indianapolis, and he. Brilliant guy and Arch-Abbot for a number of years of St. Minor, and we're very blessed to have him come out next week, and he will be the final talk. He will be the keynote speaker, if you will, of the Benedictine Lent. We do have one more monk of our long sleeves, and I think Nikki, is there anything else for announcements? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you guys for a wonderful evening, and God bless.